Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Hey Sister. Hey Sister, how are you doing?
Hey, since I'm doing fine. I can see you left the banner up there, so
Let me hide that. I'm sorry, I didn't even
no
notice
worries.
that.
We'll be talking about that later.
Yeah, we'll be talking about a whole bunch of things tonight. You know, that's the thing. You have a pre-show where you work on some stuff. But hey, here you go. You following us, you watching us live, perhaps on YouTube or Facebook. And this is Hey Sister, our weekly video podcast where we come and have the conversations that we normally have with one another. This is Hey Sister, the show for sisters, by sisters, and about sisters and misters. We were hoping to have a guest tonight, but the guest had a conflict and wasn't able to be on. So y'all get us again for another week. If anybody's watching, anybody out there? Tell me, can you hear me? Is anybody out there? If anybody's out there, yes. Hey, Jody, one of our favorites.
Jody, I'm gonna say again, we need to have you come on the show.
Our what?
I said we need to have Jody come on the show.
Yes, Jody, we need to have you on the show, honey, so you can tell folks to like, follow, share, and subscribe, and also join the conversation in the comments. That's where all the action happens. If you are watching tonight, like I said, you're tuned in live to Hey Sister. We're going to have an interesting conversation tonight. So if you saw Chris Rock's Netflix special last night. So here's the thing. I think this was Netflix first live broadcast, which was so very interesting because when we turned it on, the group that I was with last night, they had a whole pre-show thing that we knew nothing about. So they had a pre-show and an after show and the live thing in between. So I thought that was very, very interesting. Oh, girl, Jody said that hair looks good, girl.
Thanks. I finally watched it. I had gotten flat earnings going on, so I'm trying to bring these curls back.
Yeah, a little washing and go don't never do too bad. And so the title of Chris Rock's Netflix special was called Selective Outrage. And so he was talking about how that is one of the biggest problems that we have in this country. And we'll talk a little bit about the special, but really tonight we want to dive into that conversation a little bit more deeply about selective outrage. But I titled it Selective Outrage, Hypocrisy, or Stupidity. You decide, because I don't think we have a shortage of any of these three things going on right now in our society. And I think all of them can be problematic. So please make sure that you join the conversation in the comments. Let us know what you think as we dive into some of these topics tonight. But first, we want to dive a little deeper into the Chris Rock special. So you and I both had an opportunity to see him live on tour as he was working through this material that was preparing for this Netflix special. Now, it's gotten a bunch of mixed reviews for those who have watched it. Some say he's like an old man out of touch. I know you and and your significant other were like, he even had the same clothes on, like whatever it is, there's a lot that's happening around the show. A lot of folks, I was of the opinion that I saw the nuanced differences in some of the jokes and the punchlines and how he had worked through some things. Some things were almost identical to when I saw him, I think last summer here in Orlando. But all in all, it was the last 2 minutes that everybody was waiting for, right? It was when he was in June, or when he went on tour right after last year's Oscars, the slap heard around the world. He did not go really deep into the issue with Will Smith. However, on Netflix, in Jada Pinkett's hometown, he went there. And it also got me to thinking. He talked about how Will had selective outrage, which I thought was very interesting. But it also a little bit has me questioning, well, did Chris have a little bit of selective outrage or hypocrisy as well? So I don't know, sister. What say you?
Uh, so let me start by saying I first saw him in August, which, as we know, the slap will be coming up on its first year anniversary. I'm sure we'll be talking about it for many years to
You're a
come.
little muffled. Is your microphone
Oh,
on something?
you know what? It may be. Can you hear me a little bit better? Is it better?
A little bit. I think the hair is like blocking the microphone some.
Okay. Well, give me a sec then. I'm just gonna disconnect.
Cause the hair is popping, so she trying to hide the microphone with the hair, and honey, I'm getting all kind of little muffled sounds. Okay, un momento, por favor, she says.
All right.
Okay, that yes,
Hello, can you hear me?
yes,
Oh, I don't hear you. Do you hear me, sister?
yes.
Okay, so let me see here.
Well, while she's trying to work on that sound situation, so you saw him after I did. You
All
saw
right.
him 2 times after I had seen him.
I'm not hearing you, sister, so I'm going to jump out and come back, okay?
Jump out and come back. So she saw him twice after I saw him. Um, and obviously, again, when comics are preparing for these specials and these shows, they go around to these comedy clubs, comedy stores, and what have you, and they are massaging their material till they get prepared for the main stage. And this was the main stage. I think this was like a $40 million gig for this live special, or maybe a part of the whole big package. So I thought that was interesting how all this time and the timing, because we're right at that 1 year anniversary mark, nearing up to that 1 year anniversary mark, where he really dove in a lot more deeply into the slap, the controversy, the relationship, because I think also he took a year as he was taking in all of the feedback and people, all of the relationship and the conjecture about what their relationship was and wasn't, and who was mad at whom and what. I think he took all that in. And then finally, in recent weeks, probably starting around November, December-ish, Will Smith has gone back and the apology and started going back public and on social media and stuff. And I think there was a little bit of Chris's own selective outrage at him coming out publicly, and they still haven't had a conversation. But that's my take. What's your take, sister?
So I was saying I saw him in August, and which was a few months after the anniversary, because we're coming up on the first year anniversary of the slap.
Mm-hmm.
That will be, I'm sure, commemorating for many years to come. And so I saw him in August 1st, and he touched on it a little bit, but he didn't go in depth. And then we saw him on tour with Dave Chappelle. And I think I said before here on Hey Sister that while I think Chris Rock is an amazing comedian, do not get me wrong, I just feel like side by side, even though they have different material and different styles, it's just that Dave Chappelle can tell a story. He can, as my friend Jessica says, he can do a great wraparound joke because he'll start with something and end with it, and you didn't even know you were sucked in the whole time. But what I will say about Chris Rock is that I think, look, when you have been wronged, when you have been hurt, when you've been publicly embarrassed, it's not really for anybody else to tell you how long it takes for you to heal from that.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, this is not something that Will Smith thought through, because obviously Chris Rock is a comedian.
Mm-hmm.
He was always going to have a platform to turn this thing to his advantage. Now there are those who say, "Oh, it's been enough. He needs to stop." Blah blah blah. I think I agree. I do think there is some selective outrage. Look, I can't tell you not to be upset that because this is something that stays with you, right? It's one of those things that he could go cure cancer right now, and they're gonna be like Chris Rock, who was slapped by Will Smith, cured cancer. You know, so that's the unfortunate piece. I think for me though, at this point, so Chris has talked about it in his specials. He's tested the material, like you said, and now he's talked about it in his specials, this Netflix special. Will Smith has gone on his apology tour, and there's a part of me that feels like the only person you haven't apologized to, it seems, is Chris Rock. And granted, I don't know what efforts he's made. Maybe he feels like, look, I reached out, and he just didn't want to have that conversation with me. And maybe that's the truth. I don't know. But I feel like now the question becomes, so what's next? What do we do next? Because, and this is a very poor comparison, but you know, we're old enough to remember the East Coast, West Coast rap beef.
Yes.
And we are old enough to remember that there were two very prolific rap artists, creatives, who ultimately were killed as a result of this beef that when you really now peel back the layers and ask, how did it actually start? What was it really about? I don't know that anybody knows exactly what it really was about. And I think the same thing, I mean, one could point to hurt feelings. Like,
yes.
I thought you were my boy and you tried to hurt me. I think you tried to hurt me. And no matter how many times you say you didn't try to hurt me, I still believe that you tried to hurt me. So now I'm mad, and everybody I know is going to be mad. And we're going to make this thing blow up. And the same thing goes here. It's like, ultimately, this is about hurt feelings. You know, my wife is steady embarrassing me and hurting me in the public eye. And now I feel like you're testing my manhood, because as we talked about last week, this whole manhood thing, this what is masculinity thing is always popping up. And so it's like, ultimately, out of that East Coast, West Coast beef, we had two dead rap artists, and now we're left with a litany of
mediocre rap artists
and a bunch of lists that always tell us about who's the greatest, and it's like right. So I that's where I'd like them to go. Okay, y'all talked about it, y'all hash it out. Will Smith don't need Chris Rock to tell him that his wife is cheating on him. We know, we all know. Like he said, she interviewed you about her cheating. She had the boy that she was cheating with, young man who she had cheated with, on her show as well. So we don't, I mean, Chris Rock don't got to tell Will Smith nothing about that relationship. He's been knowing what it is and what it was since the beginning. And similarly, we know Chris, he was wrong. And he came up there and put hands on you, and you were better than a lot of people, because the natural instinct would have been slapped back. But had you done that, that would have created a whole nother narrative. So I'm just like, what's next? Because you know what? In Hollywood, there's a lot of content that needs to be created, and these are two very powerful men. So what's next?
That is a great question. And if you guys have ideas about what's next, drop them in the comments. We want to hear from you about what you think is next. What's interesting to me, so a lot of the commentary he had was very biting, and I get why some people are turned off by it and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, there are others who find ways to heal the traumas and move through them to handle business. And so, to your point, we have two iconic figures, and we have still voids within the entertainment space in which they could probably build some bridges and build community and grow out of, will they take this opportunity to do so? Because I'm sure this has been, I'm gonna wait, I'm gonna put this on ice, and I'm gonna show you better than I could tell you when the time comes. And the time came for this special. So now that it's done, how then do we move forward? And so
I was going to say,
it'll be interesting if they take the opportunity to now come publicly and talk about the reconciliation process, which truth and reconciliation processes that as communities around the globe, we need to be better versed in, better skilled in, and practicing, because there's too many important things beyond just your hurt feelings.
yeah. And I will say, months ago, I want to say about a month after the slap, or maybe 2 months, I know Jada Pinkett Smith got on the internet and made a comment about reconciliation. Here's the thing, though. It wasn't for her to decide that.
It not for her. And I mean, he cussed her to the ground last night. I was like, ooh, wee. He cussed her to the ground last night. He called her all kind of manners of bitches. Was that warranted? I don't know.
But again, I think it goes back to
feeling your feelings.
And I think it goes back to the selective outrage in this regard. Yes, you're talking about how we're outraged over things like, I know he does his bit about abortion. I know some people that might have made them very uncomfortable. It didn't make me uncomfortable because I'm like, you're one of the only people who will at least admit to having paid for it, and we don't know that it's really true, or if it's just a part of the punchline. But I'm like, there's plenty of people in high powered positions who are sitting here right here today telling women what they should and should not do with their bodies, what decisions they can and cannot make, who've also paid for abortions. And I thought that was a very very transparent thing to talk about. But there were some other pieces. That's the other part that's kind of unfortunate. There's some other pieces about the jokes or about the entire special. And like you said, we only hear the 2 minutes or whatever it is the thing that people care about. I don't know if he talked about his mom, and I know I've alluded to it before, his mother going to the dentist and having to go to a vet because they did not. That to me, that's, when we talk about.
And it was beautiful because he showed pictures at the end of his mother with the daughters in Paris. So I thought that was a good tie.
When we talk about not being able to educate, and I know we're going to transition over to this, when we talk about not being able to educate people about history in this country, and he tells a story about his mother who is still alive, not Harriet Tubman. This ain't happened 1200 or 100 or 400 years ago. This has happened about 60 years ago, and that she could not go to a dentist because of the laws in this country. That is something that is profound, and people will miss that because they were sitting waiting for the conversation about the slap. And that's what makes that part a little unfortunate to me.
Yeah. He had a lot of biting things. So if you haven't watched it, if you're inclined to do so, watch it. If you're not inclined to do so, don't watch it. But I do believe that as comedians are, like, this reminded me of a Richard Pryor special. Like, I think that Live on the Sunset Strip, where it was kind of painful to watch. And I was really young when that came out, where it was kind of painful to watch, as well as humor, and how humor can be used to really shine a light and expose some of our darkest areas. And so I thought he did a masterful job of that. And so let's talk about Selective Outrage, Hypocrisy, or Stupidity. and you decide, you choose. So one of the things, and I'm going to drop a link to it, and you can go online and watch the video, where Jon Stewart, who is a masterful interviewer. So if you don't have Apple TV Plus, you might be missing this new version of the Conversations with Jon Stewart, his new show. He's interviewing a state senator from Oklahoma, and he's talking about safety and the caring of children. And so last week we got into this a little bit about caring for people say they love their children and they love children, and that all of this is for protection and safety of children. But when the number one killer of children is guns, that's a conversation that that Jon Stewart is having. The number one killer of children is guns. It's not drag queen story time. And so I wanted to put on here, what is doing more harm to children, drag queen story time or church? Because we know of the reigns and years of priests abusing children, both male and female. We know of the more recent scandal in the Southern Baptist Church. We know we did a whole episode on Honk for Jesus, because we know which churches they were talking about there in Atlanta. And so is this selective outrage? Is this hypocrisy? Or is this stupidity? Where literally people are writing laws to ban drag queens from reading books to children, which didn't occur in a whole bunch of places. Like, I was like, where was this even advertised? Because I missed the advertisement. When my kids was growing up, I missed the advertisement at the library about this, okay? So wherever this was occurring, whatever communities this was occurring in, they're writing whole laws, putting laws on the books about this being illegal. However, people continue to send their children to churches and church camps where they are being all manner of abused, molested, and sexually assaulted and exposed. I'm going to drop a story. They have one about this youth pastor recently who was grooming young women and taking advantage of them. So I don't know, sister, what say you? Is this selective outrage about the drag queens? Or is it selective, or is it hypocrisy about how we really love our children? What do you think?
I think there's a word, but I don't think it's any of the words. So hypocrisy, yes, but there is something deeper there for me. Drag queen, whether you a drag queen reading or not, reading has never resulted in, like, reading ain't a problem, right? It's fundamental, at last I recall, so just the idea, okay, so let me back up. First of all, to your point, I don't even know where this occurred. Second, I have been to, for example, drag brunch in New Orleans. I had a fabulous time. It was awesome. I look at it for the artistry that it is, that there are people who are talented enough to put on makeup and hair and sing and dance and perform. No different than if you were going to a Vegas show and there were the Vegas showgirls back in the day, so it's a performance. And so in this case, if they're dressing up and they're reading to children, what do you think is going to happen? Now, there are some children who are inquisitive enough that they may have questions like, are you a man or are you a woman? And I think that that's okay for children to have those questions and ask those questions. I think that that's okay. Because that may actually start a dialogue and a conversation that otherwise wouldn't happen because parents want to quote unquote shield their children from the world, a world that, as John Stewart is pointing out, it is more dangerous for them to go to school than it is for them to go to the local library and hear a drag queen read a story. So I don't even know where this is happening, but I do think that when we start peeling back the onion, if you will, or you peel back the layers, and you wonder why people think that their children need protection from drag queens, but they don't need them from guns, that speaks volumes to me. When people think that their children need protection from seeing men kissing each other in a movie, but they don't need protection from, like you said, going to churches and being molested, or even going to sometimes their relatives or their friends and being sexually assaulted. That's weird to me. People have gone to movie theaters and there have been shootings at movie theaters, at the grocery store, at schools, at the mall, at Walmart.
And they say more guns, but less drag queens reading books.
Right. Right. More guns, but fewer drag queens reading books. More guns, but fewer books even available to be read.
Yes.
More guns, more violence, more hatred. But as DL said something about, you can read a story about, or you can hear about an enslaved person, but then won't know that how they got enslaved. I'm messing up his quote. I have to go back and look at it. But the point I'm trying to make here is there's a lot more in this society that is more dangerous than the drag queen story.
So here's the part where the hypocrisy comes in for me. I would love to get the ratings on RuPaul Drag Race and see who's watching it compared to the people who have an issue with drag queen story time. I suspect in some of these geographic areas that have the greatest outrage or the greatest selective outrage, I bet that's where the highest viewership is. I suspect that's what a higher viewership is. So miss me with that. So for me, I think it's a little bit of all three. There's some selective outrage going on. There's some hypocrisy going on, but there's also some straight stupidity going on, because literally we are writing laws for things that don't freaking exist.
But even more so than that, sister, I think there is an attempt at erasure that is going on. There are people who just want to see what they want to see. They only want to be surrounded by people who look like them, who believe like them, who go to the churches that they go to, who worship the way they worship.
But I don't believe that's true. And I'm gonna tell you why I don't believe it's true. And that's where the hypocrisy comes in. Because I bet if you look at the data, because again, it wasn't just Black people that watched Pose. And it wasn't just gay and trans people that watched Pose. Right? It wasn't just RuPaul's Drag Race has been on multiple networks and it's been on television for years.
For 1,000 years, yes.
So these things stay on air because they have a market. So when these same people, I don't want my children to see this, but y'all watching the Housewives on Sunday. All manner of them. I don't care what city they in. And so I don't believe that these people there is a thing about erasure, But I don't really believe they just want, I think it is an attempt. It's about culling power or something. I don't know what it ultimately might be about.
Well, it may, I mean, in truth, okay, so in truth, they don't want to not be around Black people. They want the culture, they want that stuff. They just don't want it to look like they want to be around Black people. And I think it's the same thing with gay people. Like, a lot of them, clearly, they just had what the mayor of Baltimore, a city in Baltimore. I mean, a city in Maryland. Anyway, like 50 some counts of child pornography and what have you. Like, they want to be a part of certain things, but then put up this appearance that they're not a part of those things.
So is that hypocrisy or stupidity?
Okay, it's all of them.
Okay, I don't know. Well, then let's talk about another thing. So, you know, you've heard of you remember the show 19 and Counting about the Duggar family in Arkansas, and they had all these children. Now, one of the children, the daughters, who Jessa, who talked about having a pregnancy where that she had a non-viable fetus. So she said she had a miscarriage, had a non-viable fetus. And instead of just going home and letting the fetus pass, because due to maybe having some complications, she had what's called a D&C.
Mm-hmm.
So abortion or D&C? Because she says it's not an abortion. And the D&C is like, it's a dilation. So they open up the cervix and then they go in and they clean that uterus out. That's what a D&C is.
Mm-hmm.
But why? So in the state of Florida, and I shared something in my personal Facebook page, you know, there's a woman who is in Lakeland who's been told her fetus is no longer viable, but she's beyond that 15-week or whatever 15 or 20-week point, and she's going to have to carry this baby until she delivers, and knowing that the baby is going to
be
dead. But these highly religious people who had a television show for years and had all of these babies, and then their children are now having babies, the same family who the son molested his younger siblings, this is the same family, right?
Which is why we're not going to be able to give them much credence on trying to define.
So is this hypocrisy or stupidity?
Again, yes, it is indeed.
So hold on, let me let everybody know real now. Y'all are tuned in live to Hey Sister. We want y'all to join the conversation in the comments. We want y'all votes. Y'all tell us, is it hypocrisy or stupidity? We want to hear what y'all take is on some of this. But go ahead, sister.
I'm just saying, yes, of course. So of course we know it's hypocrisy, but there is something that's driving, right? When I'm going back to what we were just talking about, and I wasn't articulating it very well, I guess, we know it's hypocrisy, but there is something that drives these people to believe that in order for them to, I guess, maintain whatever story that they've been telling themselves all of this time, they must say, but I didn't do it that way. So I'm sure in her mind, she wanted this baby and this baby, but we know this is a prime example of why you don't make overarching laws, because there are things that become medical exceptions. Every abortion is not about birth control. Every abortion is not about, oops, I messed up. Many of them, most of them, are not. They are about medical intervention. But because I don't even know why the Duggars are still trying to maintain this holier than thou persona, you know, with the things that her brother did to her siblings, I wouldn't even be still going. I don't know. I might have done let me just go by my married last name, because and let me just live my life and be in peace. I don't know. It seems very interesting that they still want to hold on to that. We are such this wonderful little perfect little family, and my mama had 19 kids, and now y'all know any mama who have 19 kids is not able to fully care for those children. I'm sorry. Now I know I don't have no kids, and maybe people gonna come after me.
Well, we already know. I mean, like we said, any father who has 12, like Nick Cannon, I don't care how much money you make, your presence is not there, and you're not available for all of those children to really be doing the job the way that people that nurturing human beings need to be done.
Right. So I mean, I just they of course it is hypocrisy, because again, in reading the article, they talk about DNC, they talk about D&E. The bottom line is this overarching idea that, oh, abortion, you shouldn't have an abortion because we love babies and babies deserve to live, and you shouldn't make that decision. Every baby does not live. Every fetus is not viable. And that has nothing to do with.
And everyone doesn't pass naturally. If you've had a miscarriage, it doesn't pass naturally. Right. And in some states, so you did this, and you had the means and opportunity to do it, where there are other poor women in other states that are now being asked to maintain those pregnancies at the risk of their own health.
Mm-hmm.
And carry a non-viable fetus to whatever term it's going to be, and have to deal with that emotional grief and loss, as well as putting their life at high risk. Because people think just having a baby and giving birth is just like this easy thing to do.
Just because there's billions of people on this earth, that is not an easy thing. And
it ain't easy. And the number of women who have died in the process. Now, we have medical intervention now that prevents a lot of women from dying in that process. And so the natural selection process hasn't been able to take place because we intervene. But child, bye. So you say this is hypocrisy?
Yeah, I do think. I mean, because so I guess I need a definition of stupidity. Stupidity means like on purpose, not like ignorance, right? It's not because you just don't know. It's because you choose to be stupid. Or you choose to act
ignorance is the lack of knowledge, right? Stupidity, behavior that shows a lack of good sense or judgment. So that's stupidity.
Okay.
Let's just look up the definition of stupid. Having or showing a great lack of intelligence or common sense.
Yeah, this is not about stupidity then. This is very deliberate. This is deliberately suggesting that I'm going to get on the social media and I'm going to do a 19-minute video and tell you about this thing that happened. But it's not the same, because the hypocrisy is that you just articulated is in the fact that you probably live in a state that hasn't passed these very restrictive laws. And if you do, then you have the finances and you have the means to get up and go to another state to have procedures done and then come back and pretend that nothing ever happened. Or you could just, oh, I had a miscarriage, and people will just say, okay, and they will not ask any further questions. Mm-hmm. That isn't given. So in the same vein, you were talking about, there was a woman in Louisiana. I don't know what happened, but she was seeing her child, it was the brain and didn't have the skull properly forming. And because of Louisiana's very restrictive laws, she was gonna be forced to bring this child into the world, a child that she knew wasn't going to survive. So that is the root of the hypocrisy. You can sit in your ivory tower and look down and say, oh, they do that. They get abortions. We don't. I don't do that because religiously I don't.
I have DNCs. I don't have abortions.
Right. God rest the dead. But it was like when Whitney was like, I don't do crack because crack is whack. It's like,
I just smoke a little cocaine.
It's like it's kind of the same.
I just smoke a little cocaine, but I don't do crack.
Right.
Oh,
Like
oh
crack
my
is for the
gosh.
poor.
Oh, the pores. Listen. So another thing. So selective outrage, hypocrisy, or stupidity. We want to talk about this topic of banning books or rewriting books. Now, I'm of the mindset this is stupid
Okay.
on both ends.
Yes.
To ban books is stupid. These things have already been written, they've been published, they're out in the ether. I don't know how, are they gonna go like on Fahrenheit? What's the movie Fahrenheit?
9/11. What?
No, it wasn't
No.
9.
Fahrenheit 9/11 was a movie. I don't think you're
That's
talking
not
about
it.
You're not talking about that one, but that was a movie.
Fahrenheit 451 is the name of the movie. And name of the book where they actually
Fahrenheit 9/11 was a film by Michael Moore. However, I'm just saying. But no, I know
that was about the Twin Towers stuff. That was
exactly. I'm just
no,
telling you that
I'm talking about the book about banning books and
Right.
burning books.
Gotcha.
And so if that like they're not going to be here in this school, but like, are you going to like not reproduce the books anymore? Where the books going to go? I don't know, because people have these books in their collections. I don't know. But even equally stupid to me is having sensitivity readers, because they ain't asked me about my sensitivity. Reading books and trying to modernize them. So like the Oompa Loompas, or they're changing their names. And
I was gonna say, because something body can't be fat anymore.
Yeah, he can't be fat. I'm like, these things were written at a point, at a time, and they give us context, and actually they give us clues into how humans have hopefully evolved over time and have grown and have changed and matured. But I think this whole concept about banning books or rewriting books is stupid. And I think there is a lot of selective outrage that's also going on about which books are being
banned and rewritten.
Banned, rewritten, or being called out. What say you, sister?
So this one I am going to, so again, the hypocrisy lies in which books are being selected and how they're being selected. But the stupidity is in the fact that, to your point, it seems to imply that we are not intelligent enough as human beings to be able to decipher what an artist may have been trying to convey by using the words that they specifically use.
And remember, we had these whole. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but remember, because we both had the same AP English teacher.
Yes.
And I used to have arguments with Miss Granier. Anne Granier, if you're out there, if somebody share this with Anne Granier and just let her know that we still adore her and thank her very much for helping us become critical thinkers. Because I would always argue with Miss Granier when she would do, because of course she has a degree in English and literature, and she read all of these things, and well, this is what this meant, and this is what the symbolism is. And I'll be like, Miss Granier, how you know that's what them people meant?
Mm-hmm.
That would be my argument. That ain't what they meant, Miss Granier. And then when we did the Bible, and we were studying the Bible as a part of our literature study and the stories, and then we did, what's the one when the boy fell out the tree and his friend pushed him out the tree?
A separate piece, girl.
A separate piece. Like all of that, and how the fall and Cain and Abel and comparisons, like we studied this stuff. That is the beauty of allowing teachers who have a pedagogical background and theory and philosophy, and have studied and are trained in how to pull these things out of students and open our minds, and so we can see the world in a great way. And that's what books allow you to do, because you're able to have these discussions. But now y'all don't even want like some of the most basic elementary books. Anyway, okay, I'm sorry I interrupted you, but I just had to put that up.
Yeah, I think that, like I said, it does it suggests that we as human beings are not evolved enough to have conversations about why certain words were selected. What is the nuance in those certain words? So think about it. You know, we grew up in Louisiana, right? And when we watch certain shows and the people are from Louisiana, but they don't say things how we would say it from Louisiana.
Exactly.
Or how, remember when Jessica did her review of P Valley, and she's like, everybody who's from Mississippi, where do we go when you go and gamble some money? The boat. It doesn't matter whether it's on land or not. If it's a casino on land or if it's always the boat, right?
Yeah.
That is language that is intrinsic to
the culture
and to the
of
area.
that geography. That's right.
Exactly. And so those are the kind of things that should not be removed. Like if somebody saw that and they'd be like, the boat, it's a land-based casino. No, it has to be a casino. No, because that's not the vernacular.
You don't know, and you don't know the history of the casino in this area and how they all started off as
boats, because they had to be on the water, even though we know that that's what's happening now on P Valley because they're moving the water to the land. But anyway, but I'm just so that's the part that makes it really challenging. You talked about Miss Anne Granier's class, and when we studied the Bible, I mean, quite frankly, as we've talked about before, if we're going to be banning books, then we would have to ban the Bible based on mentions of slavery and enslavement, based on sexual assaults and
adultery, sexual assault, pedophilia.
Yeah, right. Based on a lot of the same themes or reason given for banning.
And that was long before drag queens was around, but but actually probably not. There's always been drag queens, baby. Y'all
right. Well, again, so based on
ain't nothing new under the sun. That's in the Bible too.
I mean, Cain and Abel, like it was a brother who murdered a brother,
and then wanted to be bigoted about it. Like, what? Well, God, where he at? I don't know where. If you don't know where he at, I'm supposed to know where he at. And
right.
Don't people act like that right now?
Right.
Alex Murdoch, I ain't killed my children, I ain't killed my son and my wife, but then the boy phone, they finally was able to unlock the phone. That's a whole nother thing. Unlock the phone, and we hear you right there on, oh, well, I lied about where I was, and I lied about this, and I lied about that, but I'm not lying about this. What?
Well, we can talk about that next with the last few minutes. But yeah, so, in studying that and the conversations that we used to have with Ms. Grenier, because again, the fall from grace, everything was a fall from grace. Or anytime people went into water, it was a catharsis. It was like a baptism. And I'd be like, girl, how you know that's what they really were talking about? Mm-hmm. But that made for good conversation, and it allowed you, at least for me, when I did take English classes in college, it allowed for me to take that knowledge and that background, the symbolism, right? Mm-hmm. I saw Creed on Friday.
I haven't seen it yet.
Yes. No, I'm saying I'm not going to give it away, but there is the
nakedness as delicious as the posters?
I mean, listen. Okay. We
talked about the fineness last week. So.
Yes, let me finish this thought. But there's a moment in there where you see that I'm like, okay, Michael B. Jordan, director, I see you with your very creative way of, how the editor, like how he said, he now understands the story that's written versus the story that's directed versus the story that's edited. And so I'm looking at how this editing is happening. And the people next to me, they were teenagers. I could feel them getting aggravated with how this sequence was being
unfolding.
unfold, and how it was being illustrated, shown on the screen, how it was edited. But I'm like, they not getting the symbolism. They're not getting the nuance. They're not getting the deeper meaning. And that's the part.
Because they ain't reading.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. So that's the issue when you start banning books and you start rewriting books and you take things, you start taking things out of the context that they were initially intended to be in. Then you lose nuance. You lose that extra character. You lose all of those mechanics of grammar and the English language that is supposed to make a story worth telling in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that.
Yeah. So do you think it's stupidity, or selective outrage, or hypocrisy, rewriting and banning books?
I think it's stupid to ban books and to rewrite books. And I think the hypocrisy lies in the books that they're choosing to rewrite and ban.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Sounds like a winner chicken dinner to me. Well, folks, you are tuning live to Hey Sister, and you can you catch us here live on Sundays on Facebook and YouTube, and then you can catch the replay when we publish it to our podcasting platform. So whatever your favorite podcasting platform is, find it, go back and listen to some old episodes of Hey Sister and check out some of the conversations that we have, like this one. So tonight we've been talking about selective outrage, hypocrisy, or stupidity. We started with the Chris Rock special. We want you to decide, what is it that we are, what is the thing that's really ailing us as a society? He talks about selective outrage. That's where he pointed his ire to in the show, and it was very biting. He had some good points, but we wanted to dive into that a little more deeply as it relates to drag queens and church, for instance, or abortion or DNC, the semantics of it all, or the banning books and rewriting books, and what is it? I think it's a little bit of all of these things in a lot of the conversations that we have going on.
Let's talk about Alex Girl, his last name Murder. I don't care what y'all say.
It's murder.
Right. They trying to call it Murdoch.
He like Lil Murder.
I don't see a C nowhere to be found in there. So let's talk about that, because there is definitely some hypocrisy.
Come on with it, sister. What you think?
Well, okay, I don't, first of all, again, it's everywhere. So if you haven't seen the 2020 special, if you haven't seen the Netflix special about the son who ultimately was obviously Mr. Murder, was convicted of killing. He had previously been in a boating accident where a young lady was killed, and so that was a part of his defense. He claims that the people were coming back for his son, and that's why his son was killed. But then they had a woman who took care of their household, right? Who mysteriously died as well on their property. And then her children never got the money that he promised them once, for the lawsuit that was filed and what have you. So they never
And
got
even the Murder family patriarch had a suspicious death in the 1940s. They talk about all these suspicious deaths around.
And then he had the man try to pretend to kill him, or to attempt to kill him. And the man, they interviewed him. So I got to see this interview, because that man was like, I told him I was not going to kill him. I shot in the air and that was it, but I wasn't going to kill him. But
so all of that around this trial, the trial finally occurred
right
this past couple of weeks. The verdict came down on Friday, and he was convicted of murdering his son and his wife.
And like you said, then it was, oh, I wasn't there, Now they done heard the voice, and really and truly, that was the nail in the coffin for him, because
Well, and it's very interesting because that was because it took the prosecution some time to even be able to get that phone unlocked because of privacy issues with Apple.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, Apple gonna have to start. Apple, Samsung, all of them. Y'all gonna have to start adding to all the other stuff that we sign off on that we don't read correctly.
Yes.
Y'all need to add a clause in the event of a criminal investigation. I give my consent for my phone to be unlocked.
Yes.
Like,
Because y'all need to find me.
Exactly. I'm gonna need y'all to know.
If it's mysterious, find out what happened to me, y'all.
But yeah, that the hypocrisy of that family. They have been a part of law enforcement in from the rooter to the tutor in that town.
Yes.
And for like hundreds of years.
And the wealth.
And the wealth that they've accumulated.
Or perceived wealth, because how was this wealth attained? Was it by ill-gotten means?
Clearly. Well, we know part of it was by ill-gotten means. And if you are willing to kill, what other reason would you have to kill your wife and your child, if not because you thought you were going to have a financial windfall and they weren't going to catch you? Because why else? Why else?
There's nobody else in the family, so I guess he thought he was going to be able to do it.
I guess so. And why else would that lady be, I'm going to just say, pushed down the stairs? I don't know. She fell down the stairs and ended up dying. She was their housekeeper. Now, according to the Netflix show, she was the flicks. She was the one who took care of the son who ultimately died, because he was seen as sort of the, for lack of better words, black sheep of the family. And so his mama didn't have the time, I guess, to be bothered. So supposedly she was his mother figure. This woman mysteriously fell down the stairs. And then, like I said, and her children never got the money that was promised to them because Mr. Murda, their lawyer, told them about putting it in some kind of specific fund and putting it in his name. And they thought they could trust him.
Yep.
And so
but he want to blame the opioids.
Well, what did the opioids do? They came and shot his.
He want to blame it on a goose. Got him feeling loose.
Oh, was he taking opioids?
Yes, because that's what he said. He was an opioid addict as well.
So was that when he was defending other people before, after, during? Because that, again, all of those.
Then that opens all of them other cases.
Right.
Girl, I don't know. I think, as you said.
So in that case, I'm going to go with that was some stupidity, because
I think it was stupid to think that you were going to be able to get up on the witness stand, and most defense will tell you not to, and get up on the witness stand and say, I lied all of these times, but I'm not lying now.
Right.
I think that was stupid. I think it is hypocrisy that in South Carolina, where they were talking about justice, and I just remember Walter, oh gosh, his last name escaped me, being shot in the back by the police.
Scott, right?
Walter Scott in the same South Carolina, where we also have Nimrata, also known as Nikki, who's declaring that she's running for president. And there's a lot of selective outrage in that entire state, because other people who have been drug addicted and got their wealth by ill-gotten means didn't even get the grace that he received, that I think he received during this trial.
Absolutely.
So, girl, look at the time. It's done passed us by already.
It has. Quick question for you. How you feeling about Marianne Williamson deciding that she's running for president again?
Girl, I didn't even see that, so I don't.
And just overall, not that you had to see it.
That's
I
not
mean,
your lane. We had a whole Sunday school lesson this morning about what your lane is. Marion, that ain't your lane. Don't get back in that lane. And I think Bernie Sanders is gonna run again because he's out here promoting his book. You know, they all write books. That's the telltale sign when they write a book and go on these promotional tours. Ron DeSantis has written a book and he's out on his promotional tour. That's a telltale sign. But what I say is that there's no shortage of selective outrage, hypocrisy, and stupidity that's going on in our daily politics, in our local, state, and federal levels. And I would encourage everyone to just start examining things a lot more closely. Listen with your third ear and look with your third eye, because there's a lot that's happening that will ultimately, that people are actually making laws that are going to impact our lives every day. And I'm tired of being ruled by the stupid.
Agreed. I think that, and by the way, I was going to say, or what do you think about this man in Tennessee wanting to add hanging by a tree as part of a bill in order, for that bill to get his support?
Yeah.
I was like, I would have to be like, I'm gonna need you to go first. That's what needs to happen right now. But so to your point, I'm not going to necessarily say that that's not Marianne Williamson's lane, because unfortunately it's not been a lot of people's lane, and they still have been and occupied the office. What I will say is, though, we do need to, so speaking of selective outrage, hypocrisy, and stupidity, we do need to take a really close examination of the people who are running for office across the board. We really need to be very intentional about reading what is being proposed. And I know it's hard, because when they send you those voting packages at your house, the language is convoluted and it's very challenging.
It's convoluted and it's intentionally vague. And in Florida, we got a whole bunch of intentionally vague stuff that people are reacting and responding to. And then we got, what's his name out there? Well, that's not what I meant, but you wrote it in a way that it's left for all this interpretation, and that it's having real consequences in people's lives.
And that's the thing. I think that we need to be very cognizant about, when we see the selective outrage, when we see the hypocrisy, when we see the stupidity, I would also challenge us to follow the money and understand why this selective outrage, this hypocrisy, and this stupidity is on full display. Follow the money, because usually that'll tell you why.
All right. Well, that is the I'm typing that in the chat here, because I think that is the drop the mic moment of the night. Always remember to follow money. Not the mummy, the money. I'm trying to type. You ain't helping me, sister.
Because I didn't log in, so I don't have access to type it.
There it is. That's a good line, sister. When you see the selective outrage, hypocrisy, or stupidity, always remember to follow the money. Baby, that is good right there. That is good. Well, we thank you for tuning in tonight to Hey Sister. We hope that you will come back and join us every Sunday. As if it's Sunday, it is not Meet the Press, but Hey Sister. Good night, everybody.
Good night.